Thank you for coming out. This is the first event we've ever put together on resilience. My name is Peter Ricchiuti. I teach finance over at the business school right across the street. I've been at Tulane for 30 years, which is means that now undergraduates are coming up to me and saying, you know, my mother had you, you know, and you're like, what? Excuse me, what are we talking about here? So it is good to be up here. One of the things you're going to get out of this evening is the idea that really everybody has a backstory. You tend to see us as professors and faculty as people that have done very well in their lives, and it's a natural belief that somehow their lives were pretty easy, that they went straight up. And the things you put on a resume are only the good things. I remember when I first did a resume when I was 18 years old, I thought, what a great document. You get to leave out the bad stuff and put up the good stuff. I have been over here for 30 years. I started the Birkenrode Reports stock research program 23 years ago. Last year it was named as the #1 experiential learning program in the world. We beat 500 universities from 43 countries and enjoyed that a great deal. I also do a lot of speaking around the country. I do 40 or 50 speeches around the country mainly in the economy and the stock market and the financial markets. And then I have a radio show on NPR here on National Public Radio. It's called Out to Lunch, and it's a program that celebrates that New Orleans has become the #1 city in the country for young entrepreneurs, which is pretty great. It's a big thing that's happened after Katrina. A lot of young people moving in here and starting businesses. And we have a great show. It's a lot of fun. I bring in 2 business people or 2 entrepreneurs to Commander's Palace every week, like perhaps the best restaurant in the world. And so nobody ever says no to coming, which is good. I get whatever guest I want. And we talk about the trials and joys of running a business. And we get really interesting things. I had a guy a couple of months ago who, he was an inventor, and this isn't the product, but he invented a case for your iPhone that weaponizes your iPhone. It turns it into a stun gun. It was unbelievable. I'm not kidding. It shoots like 350,000 volts. It's great. And the best part about it, and the part I still giggle about even now, is that when you stun somebody, it recharges the phone, which is so great. It's just, leading to such uncomfortable situations as, sorry, Stan, I was low on juice. Let me pick you up. So then I had a couple about a month ago that I just loved. I had a couple that came up. They were a husband and wife that had started 5 different businesses in New Orleans. And they were terrific. I really had wanted to meet with them for months. And they came on there. And, the only real job of the host is to make the guests feel comfortable. That's really all it is. And so I started out. I thought I'd throw them a softball question. And you never know what's going to happen. So I asked the wife, Anna. I said, Anna, when did you know Tom was the one? And she said, when the stick turned blue. Not what I was expecting. So so you do get these things that happen. But the other side of my life that people don't know is that I have depression, and if that seems weird to you, just about every comedian has depression. By the way, if you look at them, that's really the common denominator. But my father and my grandfather were hospitalized for depression. It is run in the family. I have the advantage, I think, now of the fact that depression doesn't have the taint to it that it did back 40 and 50 and 60, 70 years ago. And I've really just had to deal with it every day, and I'll have to deal with it the whole rest of my life. But that's okay because I have the tools to do it now. I have medication that I've been on for about 25 years. I've been to therapy. I basically know, even when those days when you just can't get out of bed in the morning, I know that when my feet hit the floor, I'm going to be okay, and I can just push forward. And that's really what it's about. My father used to say to me, because this was always in our family, he'd always say, Peter, remember, you don't drown from falling in the water, you drown from failing to pull yourself out of the water. And that is kind of what I lived by. And then I had a few other things that kind of little things, like 11 years ago I had major brain surgery. If you haven't done that, terrific outing, you might want to try that. That is, and they took the whole back of my head off, and I was at Mass General in Boston, and I was out from, and it was funny, I'm a big Red Sox fan, and I grew up in Boston, and I was there. I was knocked out at 6 in the morning. I woke up at 11 at night after the surgery, and I was the And it was the day the Red Sox won their first World Series in 86 years. And I remember the nurse came up to me and said, at 11 in the morning, 11 at night, she touched me on the shoulder and she said, "We clinched last night." And I said, "What was the score?" And she said, "Oh, you obviously don't need to be in, an expensive room like this. You have your priorities straight." So it was, but you deal with things all the time. And there's setbacks and you just got to come back with them. I think one of the things you're really going to enjoy about tonight is the idea that people went through their own trials to get where they are now, and they're not done going through their own trials. It's very, it's a surprise when you start to meet these people this evening, and it's not these people. We could have picked anyone. You just don't see. You see in your life that I'm 18 or 19 or 20, and I might be struggling with one or two classes, and it just doesn't seem that I'm fitting in. Well, everybody went through that in one stage or another. It might have looked a little different for me than it looked for you. And I started, by the way, I'm a good example. I started off on academic probation my first semester. So you're doing fine. You really are. And one thing I wanted to mention is the event for Black Lives Matter is actually right over in Kendall Cram, and that's at 7 o'clock. So if some of you have to leave early, I'll understand. Don't you love that? The place where you study is called Kendall Cram. That's like so great, It's that's what God does. Like Madoff with the money, same kind of thing, That's how they create these names. So I'm gonna start with our first guest, I guess it is, and we're gonna talk to each other over here, and then there's gonna be a panel where you're gonna get to ask some questions to these folks, and you can do it anonymously. I think they get little yellow cards that you're at your tables, and because a lot of people are very hesitant to ask. But I'm going to start tonight with Michael Cunningham, who's going to come up and chat. And if you could give it up for Michael. There's a... Oh, thank you so much. There we go. Got all our parts together. Did you grow up in Atlanta?
No.
Just started going to school there?
Just started going to school there. I grew up right outside of Washington, D.C. in Prince George's County.
And what do you teach here?
Psychology.
So you know what I'm thinking.
Yeah, not really.
No, it's not. If you could see, by the way, you and I have resumes that are a page long. His resume is like 16 pages long with articles. So there's a lot to know. But how long have you been at Tulane?
This is my 20th year.
Whoa. You got the hang of it.
I'm still learning.
All right, yeah, 20 years, man. That is great. What do you like best about what you're doing?
Actually, I like working with students, probably the best. I get probably the most enjoyment out of a class when a light bulb goes off or a student says, "Wow, this is really cool." I remember my first year was kind of questioned. I had this guy who took an adolescent psychology class from me. And at the end of the class, he's like, "Professor Cunningham, I really enjoyed your class. I changed my major to psychology." And I thought to myself, like, "Hey, what have I done? Did I really get the kind of scholar I wanted in the class or not?" But it was still a good experience.
Let's check up on him. He's going to come in through the door now. Let's see him there.
He actually has a PhD now in psychology.
No way.
Yes, he does.
Should we say like they do in those mutual fund ads, your results may differ? That's just a really good example. Now you got here, you went undergrad, you were at Morehouse?
Went to Morehouse College in Atlanta. And then I went to Emory for my master's and PhD. I did a postdoc at the University of Pennsylvania. And, I thought I was on the East Coast, and then I moved directly here, and I thought I was going west.
Well, you did, sort of. Yeah, you got a long way to go.
Yeah.
There's Japan. There's a long way. Is that people see that you've been here 20 years, you've had an awful lot of success, but they don't see the whole picture of you. I mean, what was some of the things going around when you were growing up and going through school?
Sure. I went to public school in Prince George's County, and I probably went to one of the worst high schools in Prince George's County, a school called Suitland High School. And then when I went to college, there were a lot of guys who were from my area who had gone to elite boarding schools or private schools. And so they would say, "Oh, where'd you go to high school?" And I said, "Oh, Suitland." They would just say, "Oh, shoot 'em up, bang, bang." Because my high school had a reputation of a lot of violence, but I obviously did well enough to get into college. And I joked with them. I remember my freshman year taking freshman English, and we had gotten back our first assignment. I got an A, and they all got C's. And so I held up my paper, and I said, shoot 'em up, bang, bang, taught me this.
Now, you went to a traditionally black university undergrad. How'd you make that decision?
I was crazy. I didn't know. I applied to one college. I did a bunch of background. I didn't know that you're supposed to apply to 5 and 6 colleges.
It's much more complicated.
Yeah, I thought my junior year I did a bunch of research. I said, this is where I want to go, and that's where I applied. And I said, okay. Did not realize that if I didn't get in, I would be up, somebody's creek.
Next year, it's shoot 'em up, bang, bang.
Shoot 'em up, bang, bang, yes.
What have you had to confront that people probably don't know about?
Probably, I joke and say that I've lived a relatively privileged life. Although my parents were divorced when I grew up, I didn't really know when they actually got divorced. I came home in 4th grade, and there was a moving van outside. I was like, oh, somebody's moving. And I got to the house, I was like, oh, it's us. And so my mom had obviously planned this, but it still wasn't a big traumatic experience because, I had 2 houses now. And my mom had planned this, and I was like, oh, the only thing she took was our bedroom furniture. We got all new stuff. I was like, wow, divorce is really good. And then I didn't realize until I got into graduate school that divorce is supposed to be bad. I was like, oh, wow, I'm supposed to be screwed up because my parents were divorced. And I didn't realize that until I started reading about all this. I was like, oh, well, that wasn't my experience. Also, Emory was a shock to me. I was used to sort of excelling in school. And my first year at Emory, I was known as Mike from Morehouse, which was code word for the new black guy. Nobody else was known as, John from LSU or somebody else. And I was like, wow, what's going on here? And then I had, probably the most racist professors that I've ever had in my life.
How was that at Emory?
At Emory. And, and Emory's a very good school. And, I have a challenge still with it now, maybe because I was a student there. But I remember my stats professor instead of teaching us statistics, I heard so many stories about his grandkids. And so one day I just went up and asked, I said, I really enjoy your stories. So I said, but I'm not getting what I need out of this class. May I have a copy of your notes? And so he looked and was taken aback, like, I dare you come ask for a copy of my notes. I'm like, well, you talk about your grandkids the whole time. I'm not learning anything. So.
How did that end?
Well, I didn't get a copy of his notes.
No, I bet you didn't.
So I just did a couple of all-nighters and, got to it. But it was interesting nonetheless as well. I would walk around campus, and I got invited to join the baseball team. And I said, oh, do graduate students play baseball? They're like, oh, I'm sorry, sir. I thought you were an undergrad. I'm like, no, I'm a graduate student here. Little things like that. We call them microaggressions. Little things that just bug you all the time. But,
Well, how do you get over these little things that bug you? Because little things can eventually eat you alive.
That's so true. One, I was really lucky to have a supportive advisor. And I also had a group.
That was at the university?
At Emory, yes. I had a very supportive advisor at Emory. My first year, I thought, okay, this is not the place for me. After my first semester, I said, forget graduate school. I'm going to go work in the real world and earn some money. I don't like this. She sat me down and sort of helped me sort of adjust. I didn't take classes my second semester. I got involved deeply in research, and I fell in love with research. And I realized, wow, I can make a difference in this world by really sort of impacting science and understanding about kids' lives. And classes are just the small things in life. There's things that I have to take, that I'll have to do just to get out of this program, but I kept my eye on the bigger picture, and that helped me out a lot.
So that's something I've always said, that if you could keep things in front of you, to something to look forward to and all of that.
Yeah.
You mentioned growing up where you did and then experiencing that at Emory. Have you experienced other racist things that, I don't, maybe.
How much time do we have?
Do you have? Things that really, really bugged you.
That's like asking me, am I black? I'm like, yes. I can name probably many. My first year here, I was going to a faculty colleague's house for dinner on Webster Street. And if you drive around New Orleans, you can't see street signs or addresses. And so I was driving really slow, and I happened to be right in front of the house where I was going, and the neighborhood security just stopped and said, excuse me, sir, what are you doing here? May I help you? And I was like, well, I'm trying to find an address. I was like, well, can you help me? And my colleagues happened to be looking out of the window, and they said, oh, Mike, I'm just so sorry. Nobody's ever gotten stopped coming to our house. And I just said, well, how many people like me do you have coming to your house? So part of the issue is just I realized that. And so I understood that, one, is not me, it's somebody else. I think about sort of adversity. Like I think about how, like when people have asthma, typically people have an atomizer. So if you have an asthma attack, you go puff, puff, and you really help yourself get over stuff. So I look at sort of challenge that's associated with race now, like asthma. If I realize something has happened, I pull out my invisible atomizer, puff, puff. This not me, it's them. And it helps me cope with that, sort of situation a little bit better as well.
That's a great trick. With you now in 20 years here, you must have. Give us an example of a couple of times we just wanted to pull your hair out.
When I first got here, I thought New Orleans was backwards. I thought Tulane was backwards. And I said, I will be here 2 years tops. I said, there's no way I can stay in this place. I was the first black person hired in the psychology department. And I was like, I didn't come here to teach my colleagues. I really came here to do research and all this. And it was funny. I was sitting in my office one day, and this black student just kept walking back and forth in front of my class, in front of my office. And then he finally knocked on the door and said, "Excuse me, sir, do you work here?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, my God." And then he came and just sat down. He said, "I've never seen a black professor in this department." I said, "Well, I'm here." And then I would try to venture out and sort of see the city and meet people off of Tulane's campus, and somebody would ask, "Oh, what do you do for a living? What brought you here?" I said, "Oh, I'm a college professor." And they said, "Oh, do you work at Xavier?" I would say, "No." They said, "Oh, you must work at Dillard." I would say, "No." "Oh, UNO?" I said, "No." And they said, "Well, where do you work?" And I would say, "Tulane." They're like, "Wow, I didn't realize there were black professors at Tulane." I said, "Well, I'm here." But the thing that was interesting about that, and that's the story I tell when I talk about service learning in the city as well. The response I got was different depending on the community. If I was in a majority white community, they'd be like, "Oh, wow, that guy must really be sharp. He's a professor at Tulane." If I was in a majority black community, they'd say, "Wow, is he a real brother?"
Oh, wow, he can't win.
He's just a pawn that Tulane's putting out there. And so, because I'm not from here. And for those of you who are from New Orleans, when you say, where'd you go to school?
Right.
They mean, what high school did you went to? And so I don't have that high school connection.
You could shoot him, bang, bang.
Shoot him, bang, bang, yes.
Yeah. Now, if you, people out there that, let's say you're a freshman or a sophomore, and it's been kind of a rough slog so far. I mean, what do you do for encouragement? What do you tell people?
I would say really follow your passion. I started off as a computer science major and math minor. And because I was good in math in high school and I didn't know, I said, okay, I need to get a job when I finish this place. And, computer science will get me a job. I was good in math. And it was incredibly boring to me. And it was my junior year where I did the equivalent of what we call service learning here. I tutored at a school and sort of fell in love with this sort of classroom. There were two men in the school, me and a janitor. And so I stayed there for after one semester, and I had this intense experience. And all of a sudden, the principal started putting all the little boys in my class. And so one time the principal came in, and the boys were laying on the floor. They were sitting on a table. They were all doing their work. And she was like, "Arthur, can we talk about this later?" Because they're all on process and working. And so later on, she was like, "So what are you doing?" I said, "There's learning behavior and test-taking behavior." I didn't care if these kids laid on the floor while they were doing their work. They could use a crown, or a pencil, or a pen. I said, "But when it's time to take a test, we change behaviors." I said, "This is the test-taking behavior now." And that helped out. And the scores in that class actually went up that semester. And I changed my major to elementary education. And I wanted to be a school teacher. And I stayed in college an extra year. And I didn't know you can do all these kind of things. My parents are like, "What are you talking about?"
Have your parents gone to college?
No. My parents had not gone to college. And so I didn't know about all these things, like you could drop a class your freshman year. I didn't know that. I was joking earlier about how I was in the math class or something, and halfway through the semester, half the students were gone. And I was like, "Well, gosh, these kids are lazy. They're not coming to class." I didn't realize they'd all dropped. And I'm still struggling through the class. I joke about it now, but my first semester, I sort of just did what you're supposed to do, and I got like a 3.3 my first semester. I didn't really study that much. Second semester, I did the same thing, got all C's and a D. And so my mom said, "If you come in here with anything below a 3.0, you'll be going to the University of Maryland," which is a really good school, but it's home. And so now every time someone says something about the University of Maryland, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's my threat school." I'm like, "Oh my God, I'll be shamed. I will have to go home." and live at home as
Oh,
well.
that was the threatening part.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Michael, thank you so much for coming out. This is great. Really enjoyed it. Thank you. Oh, that was terrific. My threats go up. My parents told me that I'd have to go to the University of Massachusetts, so it's really the same the same thing. And my parents had not gone to college. I was the first person to go to college in my school, and I remember telling my dad that the school seemed expensive, but they were going to take quite a bit off if I played baseball, and he just convinced I was making that up. It was just couldn't understand. Our next guest is Leda Ragan, and let's see, there she goes. She's and I wish I had stairs for you. What? I mean, 'cause you have to like hop up like a gymnast or something. There's thank you. Oh no, let's get it right then.
It's Lata Rajan.
Rajan.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I practiced that. I don't know why that got there. Again, I've got a huge vita here for you and everything, but that's not probably exactly who you are in some ways. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a southern state in India called Kerala, and I did my college there as well as, college for us. I went to medical school. That's undergrad degree in India.
That's an undergrad degree.
Yeah. We go straight from school to medical school at the age of 17. Yeah.
Wow.
So
How's that
then I
work out?
moved to New Delhi, spent 10 years there, moved to Malaysia, trained in the UK. Well, mainly for our children, for their careers, because we were in Malaysia and prospects are not that great for, because I was teaching medical students in Malaysia and I could see the standard and, I didn't want my kids to go for tertiary education there. So we
And
thought
how old are these kids?
Oh, my daughter is 30 now.
But they're still your
My
children.
son is
right?
25.
Wow. Well, good. And what? And where are you here at Tulane?
I'm in the School of Public Health in the Department of Tropical Medicine.
And pathology, right? That's
Yeah, that's my second one.
okay. Why?
In School of Medicine. I mean, I've been switching. One time that was my primary appointment. So I've always had these two jobs. Yeah.
And when we hear about tropical medicine and pathology, I mean, how much of your time is in the classroom versus research, or?
Well, I've had to transition a lot because I was a clinician by training and have to come to the US, then you have to redo all your training, your licensing. I came rather late, so I had these two little kids when I came. So there was, how do I go and do all these nights, etc. So training, I just couldn't do it with the kids and the loss of income, etc. So I decided not to pursue the clinical, but just devote myself mainly to teaching and a little bit of research. Yeah.
You've had enormous success, and I've just read all the the papers you've published and all. But was it a smooth road?
No, not at all. I mean, I must say that's clinical. Like being an MD is what was my life, right? From the age of 17, had trained and done so much of clinical work. So it was a big sacrifice, but in the larger scheme of things, that was best for the family, and that's what I did.
What was the toughest part? Was it changing cultures, or is it?
Oh, with regard to giving up medicine
Yeah,
or
and-
moving, the transition? I think the toughest part of moving to the US is the lack of social support. For me, because coming from Asia, you have a lot of support. I mean, in the workplace, outside the workplace.
Just government?
No, social support.
But
like
because you had family there, or
No,
what kind of social
family,
support?
friends.
Yeah.
In Malaysia, I didn't have family, but all friends. And it's a different environment. It's very different working in the US because everybody's isolated and just doing what they do, their own work, little islands, especially in my department. But I do appreciate that things get done better and faster here. And, you may hate each other, but you work together to get it done. So it's efficient. It's an efficient process.
It's more efficient. Okay, there's some things like what don't we know about you that we wouldn't find in your resume that?
Okay. Well, you probably, a couple of things I can think of. Is I always wanted to be a poet and writer.
Really?
Yeah.
It's not too late.
And, well, that's what, I should.
Medical poetry. That would be
Maybe,
terrific.
maybe.
There's a-
Yeah, but back home in India, there's so much pressure that they want you to do. Like the best career that's is being a doctor. The second best is engineer. So everybody's putting a lot of pressure on you to take these exams, and if you get in, then there's no way you cannot go to medical school. So it was difficult for me in the beginning. First 2 years, I hated medical school. But when I started doing the clinical stuff, I started loving it. And so, you just adjust and find what you love in that new environment.
And what do you do when things don't go right? Do you have a couple of secrets that?
Well, I think don't allow yourself too much time to worry and think about why did this happen to me and why,
Self-pity you're not big on.
I think a little bit. Allow yourself a little bit of time, but then you start thinking about what can I do about this now? Now, this thing I cannot change. Something I cannot change. Why spend my time thinking about it so much? So what can I do to change this positively for me and meet this challenge? Look for the opportunity in the challenge. That's what I've always told myself, and that allows me. And I may end up doing something I never thought I'm going to do, like I am now. So
Right? Yes.
but it works, and I'm happy. So
And what are some of the things that didn't go right along the way? I mean, we jokingly earlier were talking about like a failure resume.
Yes.
Personally, professionally.
looking back to my MD days, I was very, very young then, and so I got admission for my MD in a place called the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, which is the premier medical institute in India. And I didn't know at the time of joining that you were not allowed to have a child while you're doing your MD, okay? And you actually sign a contract that you will not have a child
No.
in the 3 years that you're doing that. And then you actually have to get your urine test done for pregnancy. Yes, and I got all that done not knowing I'd just become pregnant. Yeah. I was just 2 weeks into my pregnancy. I very happily signed everything. And then when I found out I'm pregnant, my mentor, she told me we have to hide this. So I had to hide it, deal with all that, do all that, be everywhere, 8 a.m. sharp, 7:30 a.m. sharp, in spite of how unwell I am in hiding it, because it's horrible. Yeah, it was awful because the chair, one of my seniors had been asked to get an abortion. Yeah.
Wow.
So I had to hide it. And then having the baby and doing my MD, working in 3 hospitals, trying to do my thesis, it was very difficult because I was now in New Delhi, not home in Kerala. Yeah, it was very, very difficult, but came out top of the class.
Now, you couldn't have a regulation like that in the United States.
No.
Has it changed in India, by the way?
I don't know, but when I passed out and I got a job that I became a colleague of my professors, I told them all that I thought about these rules and everything that needed to be changed. So I think there is some change, but I don't know exactly about this rule. I have to find out. It's interesting. I should find out.
That seems wild.
But I don't know anybody else that has a child. I didn't MD there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I practically had to hide her in the dorm and all that. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Wasn't allowed to have a baby in the dorm. Yeah.
A baby? Yeah, hide the baby in the dorm?
Yeah,
It's tough enough to hide a cat in the
other
dorm.
trainees from other departments used to hide and pass her along when the warden comes along and things like that.
What a great upbringing. You meet a lot of kids in the dorm. That's
And she's now a doctor, my baby.
What about Michael had mentioned New Orleans being it's a very, I came from Boston. These folks came from everywhere. You came from, I guess, Malaysia at that point. But how'd you adjust here? Were there parts there's always some things that shock people about New Orleans.
Well, that's what I was trying to describe to you. Even now, I feel there's lack of social support. That really allows people back in Asia to cope better, because you have people you can talk to. Very often, I just want to talk to somebody, but there's nobody I can talk to, unless I call someone far away. So
What do you do when you feel like you're alone? Have you found ways to cope, or
Yeah, I guess so. I mean,
talk to yourself?
those- No,
love
do
talking to
things I
myself.
like to do. Doing
Yeah.
things I like to do. Yeah. But professionally, when you ask me, I'd like to mention something. I trained in the UK. So going from Malaysia, it was really difficult to arrange an attachment in the UK. And I'd gotten through all the getting approval of leave process, everything, and making arrangements for the children and stuff like that. And like a week before I was supposed to leave for the UK for 3 months training, I get a call from my supposed mentor in the UK saying, "Don't come. I can't take you on." And every arrangement had been made, and I'm like, no explanation. Why can't you? And there was no. So she just. Later, I found out she was taking early retirement and a golden handshake, but the deal hadn't come through, so she couldn't talk about it. But she knew she couldn't take me on because she was leaving her job. But I said it would have been very easy for me to now not go, because I really didn't need to do it. I wanted to do it, but I said no, I'm going. But I went there not knowing where I'm going to be attached, how I'm going to train. Entirely new environment, new exam. So I found a hospital where there were other trainees and contacted them. And they said, okay, come on over. Took me to the basement in the library and said, okay, you sit here and read all these old journals. So I didn't come all this way and make all these sacrifices to read old journals. I said, no way. Started calling all around London, and whoever was giving like a discussion session, can I come attend? So, and then finally, one of the places put me, because there were other registrars training for the same exam, they said, why don't you sit in that room where they're dealing with patients, etc., on the phone, etc., and you can hear what they're saying. But these registrars were very arrogant, and they were, the colonial attitude, very much so, and they wouldn't tell me about the patient. So all I could hear is that one-sided conversation, and I don't know what they're dealing with. So when we took our exam, I passed and they failed. So then I started getting calls from all over London. Consultants wanted to take me on because now they look so good. This person came. Within 2 months, we trained her and she passed the exam, this rigorous
I
exam.
have to say, but you showed them. There's a
So it can be done, yeah. It's easy to be depressed and give in to self-pity. It's much more difficult to think positively when you're down. But, keep telling yourself, what's the point in wasting my energy and time over things I cannot change? Let me see what I can change.
You did it. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Well, that was great. Let's see. Make sure I got these in the right order here. Let's see. The next speaker we have coming up is Rebecca Mark, and Rebecca, do you come up and join us? Again, I'm sorry about the no stairs part. It's like
It's nothing. That's
okay,
a stair.
it's right. There's no. This is a total tough guy. There's a. Make yourself at home. Now you actually are over in the. Let's see. What part of the university are you at?
I'm a professor in the English department.
English department. So like. And I saw you wrote a paper on Eudora Welty, and
I've written a book on Eudora Welty and a book on fake stories we tell about America.
really, wow. What's your favorite fake story?
Oh, George Washington, probably.
Is it the wooden teeth, or what was it?
No. It would take a long time.
Yeah, he's on the one. I mean, it's a big deal. There's a. Yeah. Now, where did you grow
It
up?
wasn't really his fault.
Oh, really? Okay. It's the damn cherry tree.
Some of it was his fault.
See, now we want to read the book.
Yeah,
That's
you
the way
have
it
to go
is.
read
There's a. Yeah. It's the one guy I believed in. There's a. Now, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia, right near George Washington's home in Mount Vernon. So
Oh God, jeez, they. Have you told the people that there?
I'm about to.
You really? Oh, that. I don't know if he'll be.
I had to depend on them to get a lot of the information.
Oh, okay. So you're a spy, and and then so you came out of. I used to live in Old Town Alexandria, a pretty part. Where'd you go to college?
I went to college at SUNY Purchase in New York when it was first started, and I went to Stanford University for graduate school.
And was us all, did you start out as an English major? Or?
I started out as a history major and became an English major.
All right, nothing too radical like your
No,
phys
no,
ed
no,
or
no,
okay.
no,
There's there's Michael and I do the ones we just change our lives over and over again. That works out fine. What was the order that got you to Tulane? How long have you been here, first of all?
I've been at Tulane since 1989.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. Now, we're not going to say how many years because
It gets
let somebody in the math department.
That's right. You came here as a child. You've been here a long time. I could go on and on about the papers and mention a couple of the book and such, but what's the other side? What's the backstory?
Well, I can read what I wrote,
Yeah, I would love for you to do that.
or I'm a writer, so sometimes it's better if I just read it.
Okay.
So-
Is it a haiku or?
No, it's not at heights long.
Okay, as long as
Yeah.
go on.
It's not that long. So anyway, I wrote the whole failure resume that they asked me to write, and then I showed it to my girlfriend. She said, "Oh no, you have to rewrite that." So just know that even English professors have to rewrite things. So, some of you know me, some of you do not. I grew up in a different time. Is this weird? Okay. I am gay and a woman who struggled with physical health challenges, depression, and learning disabilities at a time when no one spoke of these things. Mine is not the tale of catastrophic hardship. I do not come from a violent family or community. I did not lose a parent at a young age. I never suffered from poverty or racism. This is not a story of victimization. This is a story of resilience. Resilience has a terrific sense of humor and a great deal of curiosity about what might happen next. Resilience is imaginative and completely uninterested in unfairness or even injustice. Each time my reality did not match my dream, at once I would think, never. I will never be able to fill in the blank. My failings and society's prejudices will keep me trapped forever. At the same time, resilience would say, no, and I would find myself trying another way to get through the maze. In high school, I wanted to go to a really great college, but I had what we would now call focus and learning disabilities. My grades and extracurriculars were terrific, but not my SAT scores. In those days, we applied to only 3 colleges. I loved Cornell, but did not get in. Instead, I got into the University of Michigan, but could not go because arthritis of the spine kept me on crutches. I could not walk the distances at Michigan. My very closest friends in the world went off to Harvard, Williams, Amherst, and Yale. I went to SUNY Purchase, an unknown art school in the middle of a cow pasture with 1 dorm and 1 academic building. I was at once disappointed, but resilience was curious. Back surgery, crutches, being closeted, and falling in love with a woman for the first time created a challenging backdrop for my first 4 years of college. Like many silenced gay people of that time, like many people with chronic pain, I wanted to take my own life. There were no support groups and few resources, but resilience kept nudging me, kept inserting her insistent, annoying Jewish humor and her equally insistent demand for creative expression. I suddenly realized that at Purchase, I was surrounded by people just like me. I was at exactly the right school. At SUNY Purchase, we were all, even our professors, pioneers, artists, idealists. I excelled and graduated with honors. When I listened as a member of the first graduating class of SUNY Purchase to Toni Morrison give the graduation speech, I sat next to the love of my life, still closeted, but excited and curious about the future. I applied to graduate school in directing and was accepted nowhere. Few women were. I again thought, never. But resilience said, so try again. I spent the year teaching high school and taking and doing abysmally in introductory classes in Latin and Russian, required in those days for graduate school in English literature. And because of my honors thesis from Purchase, I was accepted to Stanford University. At Stanford, I came out, became a feminist, and found two of the most famous healers of the 20th century to help heal my back and heart. I struggled throughout graduate school with procrastination, focus, and pain. What kept me going was resiliency's damned annoying habit of being thoroughly, unequivocally in love with life. I loved literature, especially the literature of Mary Daly, Judy Grahn, Gertrude Stein, Alice Walker, Toni Morrison, Eudora Welty, and a whole world of women writers that still stretches out before me. And even though I was a miserable speller, not great at grammar, and could not type to save my life, I loved teaching freshman English. I bought the very first portable computer on the market, a K-Pro, to overcome my horrible typing and spelling, fought and battled and cursed at my sexist professors, and finally wrote a feminist dissertation that I truly believed I would never finish. The list of nevers has never stopped. I would never get a job, never write my first book, never write my second book, never become a full professor, never have a child, never get married, and now I truly believe I will never get my first art and poetry book published. But now I think I know better. I applied to 41 jobs, was rejected by 40. Resiliency led me directly to my only acceptance, St. Olaf College, where I ended up speaking openly about being gay in front of 1,500 students, teachers, and staff. My second job was here at Tulane University, where I'm standing talking to you about resilience. I have a 21-year-old son, I've published 2 books, and I'm getting married in June. And the only time I can say that I fail is when I forget to ask for help, when I forget that what we call failing is just our frail human selves, bravely setting out in the night through the wilderness of unpredictable life and tripping over a root or two. I fail only when I do not listen to and follow the orders of resilience. Luckily, she has become a well-known partner, and I trust her.
Yeah, that's great. That's tremendous. I'm just going to pick up on one thing you said there was kind of learning to ask for help. What did that mean?
I couldn't possibly make it without asking for help. I mean, I do a lot in my life, and so there's a lot of people that help me to do that, and just to be in this place and that place. But I also have consistently gone to therapists. I went to therapists until I felt like I didn't need to. I was suffering from anxiety and depression, as I said. I got help with editing every book that I ever wrote. I hired somebody to edit and made sure all those little silly mistakes that I made weren't there. I did a lot. Everything I've done with community, groups of people. I work always with groups because I think it's very hard to be alone. I don't think any of you can do it alone. I don't think there's such a thing. I think it's something our society tells us. And somebody's going to be good at one thing and somebody's going to be good at another.
You think people, they think they should be able to do it alone? Do you think it's something in our culture?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's I think it's a terrible thing we do to students in elementary school, high school, curricular. We shame them, who got the best score, who got the best grades, who's going to the best school, instead of, communities of people kind of support each other and trying to help each other. So they're competing against each other. We're a competitive culture, and I think we need to turn from being a competitive individualist culture to being a communal culture.
And that's kind of, you listen to the presidential, which is, I don't know, you watch the presidential debates and geez, I feel like I'm watching an old episode of Scooby-Doo where the real candidates have been...
Or the Three Stooges.
Yes, that's right, yeah. They've been kidnapped and they're in a warehouse outside of town or something. But but everybody wants you to be this rugged individualist, and I don't know if we can kind of break America of it.
I think we have no choice, because if you take a problem, and I know you know this from some of the work you do, and I think the business school is often better. I mean, you work in groups sometimes and you know how to do this. If we take a problem like global warming, how can we not do it? We need the poets, we need the people who can, create fabulous graphic arts, and the scientists and the historians to tell us the history of this. I think we can't do it alone. We just can't.
Let me ask you, you still, you've overcome so much, but day to day you still run into to things, speed bumps along? Is there a mantra or something else you use that gets you through it?
Well, I just used to say if I got a rejection from one of these hundreds of rejections I named, it would take me about 2 months to get over it, and I'd be, drama queen and everything else. And now I give myself about 20 minutes. It's like, yeah, I got rejected, end of story. And I'll even forget by the end of the day that I got rejected from whatever, the journal, everything. So I do think it helps, but immediately turn to your friends. Go have coffee with somebody, go on a walk, turn to your friends, get a hug, go to your therapist, do whatever when you hit the speed bumps. You're going to hit them all the time. And the moment you think, clear sailing, I'm flying, then somebody's just going to, like a pie's going to go in your face. I mean, it's just, it's absolute. It's a rule. Boom. You will trip.
God, I love the pie metaphor. That's really that's what I've got to remember here. We've been through a lot. Everybody up here has been through a lot, but the folks out here are still pretty young. I mean, what do you think what's our advantage? Is it just having gone through it all?
Well, I think that it's having seen that what we thought was the dream might have been a little different, so that we're not so invested in the dream that when the dream crumbles, we're like, oh my God, because we know, oh, well, I'm here. Why am I here tonight? I always feel like I'm on the right path, and I don't know why. And my friend always used to say, you don't know what role you're auditioning for. You really don't. You don't know why you're someplace or why you're doing something. But I figure if Michael and everybody here's in the room, then, I'm in the right place. So, yeah. And you see this person, right? I always bring a friend with me. Because after the whole thing is over, you have to say, how did it go?
Right.
And if you don't have the friend, you have to have the friend. So,
Are you going to say something nice? Oh, yes, perfect.
No.
You brought the
But I
right
mean,
friend.
she's a highly successful geneticist. She's not like my friend, but I just, and some of you probably have her as your professor. But I mean, I'm just saying that you bring people with you who can support you always. And you guys, I feel so sorry for you. You have so much more stuff to deal with than we did. I mean, it's a big, heavy junk that we left you. And I feel really bad about it, and the anxiety is high. And I would just say, you could change your life if you went on a walk on Audubon Park with a friend every day, which I do with Karen.
Thank you so much. That was terrific. Thank you so much. It's the pie in the face. That's what I'm always going to remember. That was wonderful. Our final guest before we go into the panel, and hopefully you're writing down little things on those yellow pieces of paper, embarrassing things. As if you can't, because they're being paid huge money to be up here, so just go at them. I'd like to bring up Mike Cohen if I could. Oh, thank you.
I'm definitely here for the money. So.
All right, good. All righty. Well, Mike, besides being a capitalist, apparently, because you're here for the money, tell us, where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Portland, Maine, a little bit north of you.
Yeah.
Yep. So we're also going to be talking about the Red Sox. That's why we're here too.
Oh,
Get paid and talk Red Sox.
That's so great. We'll leave here and go lobsters and
Yeah.
There's now, did you go to school up there?
Went to high school up in Maine. Went to Brown as undergrad. Went to Brandeis for grad school. So pretty much stayed there, and then lived in New York for a year, and then came all the way down to New Orleans.
You read Confederacy of Dunces and just decided to come down, or?
Yeah, I thought New York was the South though when I first being from Maine, and then all of a sudden it was like, whoa.
Well, we're south of South, I guess. How long have you been here?
Been here for about 8 years.
We were just talking about earlier. You stay here about 5 years, and you're sort of here. If you've made it that far through. But now, what do you teach here?
Teach Jewish studies. So I teach American Jewish history. That's my focus.
Now, that's actually. I was looking at the course catalog. There's a ton of classes there. Now, what's involved in that? What do you teach? I mean, what's in there, right?
Oh, so I teach kind of survey courses that cover Israel and America and Europe. I get to do the seminar classes too, which are always a lot of fun. So I'm teaching a class now called Jewish Youth and Cultural Change. So we're looking at basically the modern Jewish experience through the eyes of teenagers and 20-somethings who really reshaped the course of Jewish history just through a simple idea. That's a fun one to teach.
Now, non-Jewish students in your class?
Oh, yeah.
sometime?
Yeah.
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 There's I grew up in a town. Well, I grew up in Brookline, Massachusetts, which was really funny because it was an all-Jewish town, and I was the
Yep.
only Gentile in the whole town. It was I know a lot. I know I'm almost bar mitzvahed actually. I think my dad used to tell a story where I was like 7 years old and I was at the barber shop, and the barber asked me. He said, "Peter, you a smart boy?" And I said, "Yeah, on the Jewish holidays, I'm the smartest kid in the school." And I said the barber almost cut my ear off laughing about that. But so now, why Tulane, and how did that road go? Is it Brandeis was the stop before here?
Yeah, Brandeis did a PhD at Brandeis, and it's that same when you graduate from anything. It's like, oh God, where am I going to go next? What's going to happen? So I had this one-year job offer at Rutgers, which has a really good Jewish studies program, and it was safe. It was just outside of New York. I had lived there, and that seemed like it was kind of the good choice. And then all of a sudden, this offer came down from Tulane, and it was a 2-year offer, and could have potentially led to more. Whereas I knew Rutgers was just a fellowship that was one and done, and did a lot of hemming and hawing, and said, New Orleans. Wait, I don't know anything about this place. I took the Tulane job, and the next day I thought I totally screwed up. Sometimes you make a decision, right? And then you think, okay, all right, good, I made that decision, that was tough, I did it. But I decided that I was gonna come to New Orleans, gonna come to Tulane. I told Rutgers no, I told Tulane yes, and the next morning I just woke up mortified. But it was definitely
drink again.
No, it was definitely the right choice. The 2-year position became a tenure track position, which became a tenured position, and I absolutely love it here. Met my wife here, and that's been fantastic. But it was that morning that was just like, I don't know what I got myself into.
What did you do then? I mean, that was you didn't obviously change your mind or start backtracking. What'd you do?
I mean, I couldn't change my mind. I told Rutgers no, and I had a deadline. I told
Can't
them
call
no.
only kidding?
No, and I just said, okay, this is the path that I'm going to go down, and I'm going to embrace it. And if it's great, fantastic. If it's not, then hey, I think Michael, that was your point. I'll stay here for 2 years, and then out I go. But after 2 years, I was like, this is great. They liked me, I liked them, and managed to stay.
I meant to stay here a couple of years. My little Italian aunts in Boston still say, "So, Peter, when are you moving home?" It's like it look bad. I have a wife and children in Louisiana, but it's but not telling that.
My Jewish aunts and uncles in Brookline also say, when are you moving home?
You've got them in Brookline. That's so great. This is great. We could get on the Green Line together. This is
Perfect.
This,
Except it'll never come. It's worse than the street. No, the streetcar here might be a little
is
bit
the
worse
worst.
than the
Yeah,
Green
there's
Line.
but there's a lot to love here. What were some of the things that? Well, how about since you got to New Orleans, since you got to Tulane, what are some of the things you've had to overcome?
I mean, I think this is being in academia is hard. I know I've had to come to Rebecca and say, Rebecca, can we please have lunch? Can we please talk about some stuff? I mean, it's hard. You've got, in academia, you have this, you're judged by your publications. You're judged by how much you do and how much you produce and how much you write and where you speak. But you've also got to teach, and I kind of like teaching, and I know a lot of us do like teaching, and sometimes the emphasis isn't supposed to be on teaching. So it's like, okay, how can I be a good teacher and still do well and still do well in the other things that I'm going to be judged on? And so it's a tough balancing act.
And what do you do? I talk to a lot of Jewish students that say they're Jewish sort of culturally, but not religiously. You're not advocating in this class. You're just kind of straightening some things out, or I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Maine. It's how,
Jewish Mecca, I believe.
Right. I mean, I never had a strong Jewish identity growing up, and the courses that I teach, we're talking about history. We talk about culture. We talk about how different people have different Jewish identities and how those developed. There's an interesting article. I don't know if anyone saw it in the New York Times today about Bernie Sanders and his sort of kind of closeted Jewish identity was, I think, the phrase that they used. But they had a bunch of rabbis talking about what it meant to be Jewish, what Jewish identity meant. And I think one of the things that I've learned from, the courses that I teach is it's not always about the rabbis. It's not about the religion. It's not about, are you super religious or not super religious? But there's the cultural piece. There's so much about, how American Jews and Israelis and Jews throughout the world have kind of balanced this one part of their identity and this other part of their identity.
And then do you, in terms of Judaism, is it what helps you out when you get stuck? I mean, is it something you rely on?
I mean, I should probably say yes, but
But Father Johnson, you need to.
no, I think that's certainly part of who I am, and it's certainly part of the values that I bring to the table. But I think having that walk in Audubon Park, right, having that support network, having the right people to talk to, I think is just as important. I mean, I think for me, Judaism and Jewishness frames a lot of who I am and who I how I approach problems. But that kind of me thinking about problems and having stuff sort of go through my head and not having an outlet for it, I don't think that's more of a challenge than just being able to say, hey, let's, I got to talk this through.
And one of the things that came up a few minutes ago was the idea of asking for help and such. I mean, are you hesitant to do that in your life, or have you kind of reached a point where you realize it's necessary?
No, I think the more I experience, the more I realize that that's really the that's really the key. I mean, we sort of think that we think that we know all. We think that we know the path. We think that we know the way to sort of get where we're going. But the more you realize, hey, I don't know the answer to this, or I don't know how to. And I think it's the same like when a student asks a question and you don't have a clue. When you're a first-year professor, you just you kind of start tearing your head up and you say, well, this happened and I'm sure it happened like this. But then, now you kind of say, you know what, I don't know, but I can figure out where to find that. And we don't all know the answers.
And that's okay.
Sure is.
Like,
I hope.
now, what about, I guess some people said to you, geez, coming down and teach Jewish studies in Louisiana, people think, like when my parents would always tell their, it's funny, the way it works is if my parents told somebody that their son was in New Orleans, it was like, wow, that's so cool. And if their son was in Louisiana, she'd go, is he in the military? Why else would you go down there, So what about a Jewish guy coming to Louisiana? Did people think that was an odd call?
Oh, of course. I think I grew up in the Northeast, and that was my life. And like I said, jokingly I said New York was the South to me, but it really was. That was the farthest away I'd ever been. I, had sort of, originally just going as far south as Providence was like, okay, that's south. And this is an entirely different bird. And I think, I came down here not knowing anybody. And I think that was super challenging in a lot of ways. But I also think that was really, I guess, exciting and invigorating in a lot of different ways, because you could just say to people, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here, or I don't, I don't know anything about this, this term or this phrase or this place, and
Are
help me
crawfish
kind of get
kosher?
involved.
That's a question. You got to know those.
Depends
kind of
which
things.
synagogue you ask. No, really.
Really? Okay. I needed that cleared up, and I'm glad you
Yeah.
gave it up there.
Yeah.
And of course, these students have come from different places where they came into an environment where they have a lot of people, they're peers, but they may not feel like they've got somebody who they can really rely on. I mean, what do you think? Is it kind of like a waiting process where you kind of meet a lot of people and then just find your tribe eventually? Is that?
In terms of college, I think it's hard to find sort of that place. It's not that, it's not, so simple, okay, you get to college and you know exactly where your tribe is or what your sort of thing is. I think I know we probably have to move quickly. I'll tell this one story, but it's kind of a long, it's kind of a long story.
This is
but
your
it's
place.
No, it's not.
Sorry.
No, so it's that the question of sort of finding your place. Like I got to college, I went to Brown, and I got there and was like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Like these, I grew up playing sports in high school. That was sort of my identity. It was, being on the hockey team, and all of a sudden I got to college and I was like, this is not necessarily my place. And it took like 3 or 4 years to really kind of figure that out. I mean, by the time I was a senior, I was absolutely loving it, just in time to graduate, right? But then academically, too, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I went in as an engineer. I thought that, all my AP calculus and physics, that was going to pay off, and I was going to go into that. And after a really low grade on my first exam that I studied really, really hard for, I came to conclude that wasn't going to work.
Did you go straight from engineering to Jewish studies?
No, I went to engineering, to international relations, to history, and then history and Jewish studies. So everyone's like, oh, you're a Jewish studies professor. You majored in history and Jewish studies, and then you had a really clear path there. But no.
Mike, thank you so much. Thank you, Mike. Oh, now I think the way we're going to do this is, first of all, we're going to get, unless the panelists become very skinny, there's no way for them, they'll fall right off the edge here. So, am I doing that? Oh, yeah, I didn't know. I'm kind of all-purpose here. There's, look at that. Oh, it's on wheels. That's the key. I thought this was going to be a very macho thing. All right. So then we're going to have the panelists up here, no particular order, maybe by height or whatever you'd like to. Oh, chairs, that would be good. There's yeah, that's the traditional way. And you will not be identified. They will not open your Apple phone. There's a, let's see. My favorite example of seeing a scene like this as they get settled is, I remember about 15 years ago, Jason Kidd left the University of California at Berkeley, and he signed with the Dallas Mavericks, and there was a setup just like this, and they had the owner of the Mavericks and the coach of the Mavericks and Jason Kidd, and they asked the owner, what do you think? And he goes, we're real excited about having Jason here. And then they asked the coach, and the coach said, really thrilled to have Jason here in Dallas. And then they asked Jason, what do you think? And he pulls the mic close to him and he says, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to turn this program around 360 degrees. See, the expression is 180, it's like people going, oh, for $15 million, we're right back we started from. So they, let's see, this is a much more august panel, though. This will not happen. And don't have math questions. That would be another thing. Let's see, any yellow sheets? Let's see. We have to have his prizes. Oh, there's the, yeah. Oh, there we go.
My name is Benjamin Freifeld. I'm from Danville, Virginia, which is right on the state line with North Carolina. And first, I'd like to thank all of you for speaking tonight. I have a question specifically for, I'm sorry, I forget your last name. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Rebecca Mark.
Professor Mark. My senior year of high school in March of 2012, I had a snowboard accident and fractured 2 vertebrae in my neck. And then later in June of 2012, slept in a funny position and woke up and was paralyzed below my neck. And fortunately, I obviously got very lucky. Standing here today, I just a couple nights ago played basketball with friends. But after hearing what you went through and experienced as an undergrad and still today with chronic pain and with dealing with surgeries and going, I imagine, to and from school, I guess my biggest question is, how do you deal with your chronic pain daily, and how has that changed since that was something that became an everyday part of your life, and how has that changed until now? And yeah, I'll give time for that.
I'd say the biggest change that happened is in the beginning, it seemed like I was the pain. That was my identity. And I felt very much like it was my identity. And it moved through a lot of very smart people telling me. It became something I had to deal with, but it was not my identity. That meant that I could get up one day, I'd be in terrible pain, the next day I'm not, and I just moved through it much more fluidly. It is a constant struggle. You have to give yourself, you have to treat yourself like you would a child or a loved one who had this, and say, you know, we may need a little more, like a nap in the afternoon, or we may need to eat really good food, or we may need to go swimming every day, or whatever it is. So you can't treat yourself the same way you see the guy next door in the dorm treating themselves. So they may stay up all night or not, you know, do whatever horrible things you all do to your bodies. Which I'm not going to get into. I have a little judgment about that. But anyway, but I do think that a person in chronic pain, and you have to remind your friends, you know, I can't really do that, or I need to go to bed, or whatever. So it is really, it's hardest in college, and it gets easier and easier in a lot of ways. But it's a constant. It's like something I deal with every single day, you know, kind of get up, check out how everything is, and some days it's good, and some days it's not. So, yeah, and I'm really sorry you went through that so young, and I'm glad you're standing there, and I'm glad you played basketball, and I would say also getting massage, getting chiropractic, getting all the things that you need, and finding ways to get those paid is very, very important. So, I hope you feel better.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So this is from a student for Dr. Cunningham. I'm also from a notorious school, but here in New Orleans, when I go home, I get called out a lot for being like those Tulane kids. Did this ever happen to you, and how do you balance the two conflicting cultures?
It happens all the time. I always think about sort of my network of friends, and my friends are very sort of diverse. I have friends who didn't go to college. I have best friends from college who are now medical doctors, and we all sort of just boys, if you will, in terms of how we get along. Also try to think about stuff in terms of who I am, in terms of where I am as well. Like if this was a class, I would talk about sort of personal identity and reference group orientation. You know, we're all a part of a Tulane community, but we also have a personal identity as well. Sometimes those two connect, and sometimes they don't. Like right now, they're all connecting. So we're all in this space. We're all talking about sort of resilience and sort of doing well. But sometimes our personal identity may be a bit different. So when we go home, people will say, "Oh wow, what are you? Are you acting white? You know, do you think you're better than we are?" All those kind of things. And the bottom line is once people get to know you and know your core, you have to also realize too that many times when people are teasing you or asking you those kind of questions because they're insecure about losing you as a friend. And so assuring people that the friendships run deeper than the spaces that we are as well. I've oftentimes have had people say, "Oh, well, I can't go here," or "I can't go there." And I'm like, why? You know, this is part of who we are, and we need to do this stuff together. Yes.
And then this is for anyone. What do you feel is Tulane's role, if any, to support and recognize students facing extraordinary personal hardships? And then they shared a story that I'm going to read. For example, I was on the verge of becoming homeless just prior to the start of fall 2015. When I told my advisor about the situation and how it may affect my ability to attend, her only response was, "Well, I hope it works out for you."
Anybody, who's named anybody? There's a...
Well, I'll start, and I'm sure people will add in as well. I feel that Tulane has an obligation to students once you get accepted. When you get accepted at Tulane, you get accepted with the knowledge of your economic and social background as well. So I know at the undergraduate level, Dean McLaren has done a really good job of setting up emergency funds for students who have challenges, and so seeking out those kinds of people as well. Oftentimes, you know, you can have professors who are a-holes and don't know what they're saying. You may not have the right advisor, and so don't stop at that one person. Go ask somebody else a question as well, like, "Hey, this is the challenge that I'm having. Who else can I talk to, you know, at Tulane? How can I also get through this sort of process as well?"
You should act like a family or a community. We should protect every one of our students in the best way possible. And if somebody is on the verge of becoming homeless, it's very important that we find a way to bring in all our connections. As staff and faculty here, we have a lot of power and connections in this community. And, I think we could do a lot better than that.
Yeah, no, I think we absolutely can. And I think to Michael's point as well, if you get an answer like that from somebody, ask the next person, because that's not, don't always think that somebody in a position of power who gives an answer that is just so reprehensible, don't always just assume that that's what everybody else is going to say.
And I would say too, you've met all of us as well. I mean, if you don't know who to go to, email us, and we can try to put you in contact with the right person as well. The organizers of this event are very much concerned with those same issues too.
I think I'd like to add from personal experience with students is, I agree completely that we have a responsibility as the university, but I think students need to be more open too, because I sometimes hear them say, oh, they're not going to do anything if I go there. When I encourage them to go to somebody who's in charge, who can help them, they're like, I don't want to talk about it to anybody else, and they're not going to do anything. So there's prejudgment like that, and then convincing them, which I've been successful quite a bit in getting them help. But I do feel there's that feeling among students that, and maybe it's we're not reaching out enough, or I don't know what's going on. Yeah.
And it's hard too, and that waiting to the last minute. I mean, you don't realize you're going to be homeless overnight. It is sort of a process. You've not paid your rent for 3 months, and so something that's going on. And so coming to somebody at the third month, it makes it more of a challenge, because we're working on sort of emergency circumstances. So really reach out early, say, hey, I'm struggling here. Are there jobs on campus I can get? Are there ways for me to sort of work through things? Are there additional grants and stuff I can apply for that I'm eligible for as well? So starting early, which also means being open to others, and also you have to be confident enough to say, okay, I'm not going to be judged. And we should think about, this safe space, if you will, to sort of ask those really hard questions.
I just want to say that, the faculty here and the staff, I've been confronted with a couple of things that are like that over the last 30 years, and each time I've thought, I don't have the answer, but I know somebody who has the answer, and so I wouldn't spend a lot of time trying to figure out who the exact right person to ask was, but if you can just get into this community, you should be okay.
And as undergraduates, it's a really good idea to start at the Newcomb-Tulane College offices, because somebody there is going to know somebody for you to call.
That's true.
Great. Thank you guys all so much.
Thank you.
Hello.
Adele had this problem the other day. I just know it's
Hello.
Hello.
So this question is for anyone. What is the best way to approach faculty members for help?
But can they
Approach
qualify?
the right faculty members to begin with. It's a really good idea to talk to your peers. What faculty members in my department are easy to talk to? Who's willing to talk to me? And start really talking to people. When you're a freshman or a sophomore, that's harder because you might not know some people. But some faculty members are very shy or not very good at talking to students. Some are really great at talking to students. And also remember, you have those academic counselors. There are counselors in the counseling center. There's a lot more places to go, but if you have to really talk to a faculty member because of a class that you're in their class, then you want to go, again, as early as possible. Don't come in and say, I was supposed to write that paper 3 weeks ago and I didn't do it, and you've been gone for 3 weeks, because we don't know what was going on. But if you start having a hard time, go in as soon as you can and say, I'm having a hard time, get a note, something like that, and present your issues. And it usually goes much better that way. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I would even add, not just in a classroom situation, if you want to talk to a faculty member that you've seen on campus or heard about, just send an email and say, hey, do you have office hours? May I come by and chat with you? Can I meet you for coffee? Or something, just to sort of talk about your experiences, and I want to talk about yours. I want to talk about mine as well. I mean, I love coffee.
And I love to eat.
Yes. And these wonderful programs where you all can get like vouchers or something to take a professor to lunch.
I was just gonna say
I'm
that.
like, hello? You all may not like Bruff, but it's a deal for us.
Yeah, and also I wanted to qualify that a little bit more. What sort of help, other than classroom help? I echo what has been said earlier, and there are opportunities to, and many professors would like to spend time with students, and I've ended up mentoring students for honors thesis and things just from the Take a Professor Out to Lunch program. But I'd like to mention here asking for letters of recommendation. I mean, I would have someone in my freshman class, and after like 3 years, I haven't heard from them. During class, they never spoke in class or never came up and talked to me, and then they want a letter of recommendation. That's hard for me to do because all I can write is the student got a B in my class or an A in my class. I don't know the student, right? So if you need letters, try to find professors, early on that you discuss things with or you work with. They need to know you a little bit extra in order to write you a good letter. You can't just have taken a class some years ago, and we want to write good letters for you, but you have to enable us in that regard.
I would say also, just as a last thing, we can get pretty bored in our office hours if we don't happen to have an exam that week. If there's an exam, we always have a full, a full slate. But we have office hours, and it's for a reason. And it's always great to see people come by. So don't be, intimidated if it's your professor, if it's for a class, or if it's, a professor who you want to talk to or get to know. We don't like to just kind of hide in our offices for the full length. So it's good to see. It's good to see students.
And don't depend just on emails. We get a lot of emails. We might accidentally, not see one or something. So do come to the office hours. It's a great way to meet professors.
I'd even suggest that during the course of your time at Tulane, you'll end up finding 2 or 3 professors that you sort of click with. They're teaching exactly what you want to go into, or you just get along with them personality-wise. And I would get a hold of them and keep those relationships going. Because when you graduate from here, you'd like to have 2 or 3 contacts that are still part of your life, and just start fostering it while you're here.
And you may think that we remember that we gave you that D in the first class you took with us, but we probably don't. So, and we don't see you and see Stuart D, Cohen or whatever. We just see.
Oh, pick on the guy.
We just see a student who wants to talk to us, and it's fine. So.
Hi. As someone who has struggled with eating disorders in the past, I think that sometimes the tough part of going to college doesn't come from the coursework or the social aspect. It comes from internal pressures that don't really have a lot to do with outside aspects. Just a general question, what do you guys think the best way to deal with those internal pressures is?
You have free counseling at Tulane. Take advantage of it. And you get so many sessions that are free for your whole time here. I would go in there and say, hey, I need an appointment, find out who is the best counselor or therapist for you to deal with that issue, but then also get involved in other social things as well. I mean, because part of the issue about eating disorders is that we have a hard time seeing ourselves where we are. People with eating disorders are very good at sort of recognizing other people and what their issues are, but they have a hard time understanding ourselves. And so one thing is just to get to know yourself a little bit better as well. And so the counselor little things like, meditation, just sort of get yourself grounded before you go to class. If just take 5 minutes, just sort of, just some quiet sort of thinking in your head, like, hey, what's my day like? Sort of have reflection. I used to keep a journal because my life was just so boring. I would write in, but then I started lying in my journal, so I stopped that because I thought, I was like, oh my gosh, somebody finds this, it's going to be really bad. But, find what works for you. That didn't work for me, but find what works for you too.
And you have to deal with a some sort of eating disorders clinic, or we've got some very good ones in town. I think there's one at Tulane University. Anybody here who knows that information? There is some very good clinics, and there's some very good therapists and counselors. You have to be working with that. And then it's again, another thing that is extremely hard to have an eating disorder on a campus, because people do things like, don't eat
Free pizza.
breakfast, and then it's just like bad food all day or whatever. Or girls are walking around saying, well, I didn't eat breakfast, I didn't eat lunch, and I haven't eaten, and because you've been working with it, that you have to eat those regular, and you have to make sure you're getting all the calories that your body needs to survive and everything. So all that. I have a very good friend whose son has anorexia and is dealing with that on a college campus, and he said that he often, as a man, couldn't get the number of calories he needed in the situations he was in. So, and I think there's enough awareness that you can talk to older people about it. Your peers may not be the best, but there's a lot of support. So, and
CAPS and the Well are two places I would start, though, because they can also connect you to community resources if they're not available on Tulane's campus as well.
yeah. Have you been getting help?
I actually am recovered, which is great. I got help in high school. It's just, and I see it a lot in my friends too, and ways to help them, because it's so hard for us to see from ourselves from others' perspectives, because sometimes it's hard for people to believe how well they're doing and how good of a friend they are, because they don't see that in themselves. So it's more of just an internal how to appreciate ourselves more, like our friends do for us.
You said it better than
Yeah.
anyone could.
And one of the things that I would also say too is a nice note. Oftentimes we've forgotten that if you get a nice note from somebody, how much that means to people as well. If you just a little note saying, hey, I really enjoyed spending some time with you last weekend. Hey, you're looking good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, good. Hello. I originally came to see Michael Cohen, but I was actually overwhelmed by the panelists, so I'm going to ask questions to two different people, but it's fine.
But you have to
I've taken a lot
draw,
of
man.
classes with Michael Cohen, and I've asked him a lot of questions. My name's Carly Goldberg.
And I actually met Carly when she was visiting Tulane. She was sitting behind me on the row behind me on a plane, and somehow I got talking with Carly and with Carly's mom, and then she showed up for her first semester here and was like, "Hey, you look really familiar." We made the connection. So we've had our chance to talk on the plane. So
So I have two questions. One directed for, I don't want to mispronounce your name, but Dr. Rajan.
Rajan, yeah.
Rajan, and then another for Dr. Mark. So for Dr. Mark, you mentioned in your, I guess, evolving of character late in, actually post-college it was that you mentioned that you came out of the closet, you became a feminist and something else self-discovery-wise. I'm just wondering why you, if you meant that you came out as a feminist, or if you actually did become a feminist. I'd like to know why then, and if you were just coming out as one, why did you come out then as a feminist? Does that make sense?
I actually came out as a lesbian. So I was coming out of the closet. So probably just slang for my generation would have been I came out. But I came out as a lesbian. But in those days, the feminist movement was really growing, and there were writers who we read, Adrienne Rich and Mary Daly and Judy Grahn, that made us come out as feminists also. And the reason was I'd had so much education by that time. I'd had such a fabulous education from women professors that I really understood my place in society as a lesbian, as a woman, in terms of feminism. I think it's harder now to come out as a feminist than it was then. I think among your generation, I think there's a lot of people who might not call themselves feminists. And there's a lot who would, of course. But yeah, so no. And it was because I had sort of hit a point of understanding with all my reading. It was an intellectual nerd's journey where I read my way into feminism. But, yeah.
Very cool. And Dr. Rajan, you mentioned that when you first arrived in either UK or the States that you experienced some sort of social isolation. As somebody who's a huge advocate on destigmatizing any sort of social anxiety, mental health concern, about sort of owning the fact that it's totally okay to feel isolated, I was wondering if, and if not, why not, did you seek help? Because it's so interesting, you guys are on a panel advising us to use resources at school, yet you were very aware that you had a lot of trouble connecting with others upon your arrival away from Malaysia. So I was just wondering what your process was.
Okay. If I get what you're asking is about the social isolation I felt both in the UK and in the US and how I dealt with it, right? I don't think I really sought out help, like in terms of professional help. But everywhere I went, I tried to have a social support network. And I think that theme has been recurring in whatever all four of us said, is to have that support. So even in the UK, I was able to find two other women who were already consultants, and we became very good friends and started going out together. And so that was helpful, very helpful for me. In the US, at work, I love my colleagues, most of them, and it's a good environment at work, mostly. There are some difficult personalities who make life very difficult. But I do feel a little isolation other than work. I must be honest. Some days I'm like, wish I were back in Asia. I would never feel like this because, for example, my mother was the eldest of 10 children, and she was like, our house was like a common room or something. People were dropping in all the time. In Asia, you don't have to call to visit anyone. You just drop by. It's just expected. So my house was full of people all the time, and there's food cooking all the time, and batches of food being served, and very active, and to the extent that when I was doing my medical degree, it was hard for me even to start studying until everyone went to sleep. At 11, I was starting to study, and I especially remember one time that anatomy exam tomorrow morning, and I take the skull to start, we have the bone set to study, and the skull, and then my dad wakes me up the next morning. It's time for your van's going to come to pick you up. And he says, why are you sleeping with a skull on your pillow? So that sort of environment I came from, you can understand now the difference. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Hello. Okay. I'm William Gillespie, and I want to be a high school teacher, and being that everyone on the panel is, in a sense, a minority teacher, I wanted to ask if you had any advice for a minority teacher who's going to be dealing with, probably in New Orleans, a lot of kids who are from difficult areas. Well, I'm hoping to teach kids who are from difficult areas, or in general, just how to help minorities feel included sort of in your classroom environment.
Yeah. I'm a developmental psychologist by training, and my area of quote-unquote expertise is adolescent psychology. And the way I approach things is from a human development perspective. And too often, we put racial and ethnic minority kids under the label of being a racial and ethnic minority kid. But they go through puberty like everybody else. They also have growth spurts like everybody else. They have self-esteem issues like everyone else as well. So one, look at the core of who humans are first, but then also understand their sort of where they come from as well, and that there's no one community that's better or worse than someplace else. And so, like, one of the times I would talk about, when I work with adolescents, I talk about sort of school behavior versus home behavior. I study hypermasculine attitudes in black males. And so while some black males have this tough guy attitude, when they come to school, they disrespect teachers and all this kind of stuff, that's actually resilient in their community. Because you have to be tough, because if you're weak or perceived to be weak in your community, you may get harassed and all that kind of stuff as well. But you have to turn that off when you come to school. And so learning how to code switch, and also learning that when you come places that you're not better than people where you come from as well. I worked with a local high school student a couple of summers ago, and she said that she didn't realize that the word sink was not pronounced like zinc. She said everyone in her family pronounced it zinc, and it wasn't until her experience here at Tulane that she realized that she was, a valedictorian of her class, and she was saying zinc. I said, well, when you go home, you say zinc, and you say sink when you're at Tulane. I mean, it's simple as that, because you're not better than your family or your community because you're learning different things as well. So one, always think about kids from a human development perspective, but then also recognize the potential challenges that they have as well. Working with urban kids, they have to deal with issues of race-related stressors. And oftentimes during high school, it's the first time they start dealing with that. And they'll start asking questions about, like, what's going on? They start realizing, wow, I am a person that my gender may be salient to me, my racial ethnic identity may be salient to me, my religion may be salient, and how central is that to me? You may work with a black kid who's gay, and their being gay is much more central to being black. And they may feel like, well, I don't fit into the black community because they say, oh, blacks aren't gays. And they may say, I don't fit into the gay community because, they don't like really people of color. And so helping kids to be who they are, but from a human development perspective, I think is important.
And they're very lucky to have you there, because just the fact that a minority person, that a person of color is in the classroom, just does a whole bunch of things. So, being proud to be yourself, tell them stories about growing up, tell them resiliency stories. I don't hide my weaknesses from my students. And you have to make the choices. You don't want to, tell them everything. But occasionally you can just not act, oh yeah, I remember what that was like. Or, it depends on what age you're teaching, but they're very lucky to have you. I'm so glad you're doing that.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tim Dimmick. I want to thank you all for coming and speaking tonight. I have a question. I'm undecided in my major. I was in architecture for 3 semesters, but going into it as a freshman for the 5-year master's program, I still didn't know if that's what I wanted to do, but I was giving it a shot. And I feel very lost in terms of what I want to do for my major. I'm thinking about film. And then furthermore, my career, I have no idea what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I don't have any major goals that I'm working towards. So motivation doesn't come easily towards me, I feel. But all of you have successful careers. I was wondering what sort of kept you going, what goals were you working towards, and in your daily life, what were you sort of working towards or trying to get out or maybe give to somebody else?
I think I'd say probably what a lot of your parents may not say. But, for me, I didn't know what I wanted to study when I was in college. Every year I had a totally different path. I said, okay. And for me, what ended up working was it was just the courses that I liked. Right? Like I got to my junior year and I decided that, Jewish studies courses were really resonating with me. I was taking courses across the curriculum, and I came to my major that way, right? Like it was stuff that obviously if I was trying to find the most practical of degrees or the degree that I would get the best job prospects for, Jewish studies was not the way to go. But what's that?
Maybe finance.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not too late.
That was the right route. No, but I just sort of followed my interest, and I think it was the same thing professionally. When I graduated, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and in fact, I knew that I didn't want to spend my senior year being in this sort of crazy mindset about jobs. So I said, okay, I'll deal with this after college. May or may not have been the best idea. But I worked at a Jewish community center for 3 months and hated it, and quit after 3 months. decided I would, take the LSAT because law school, that's what everybody does. And then I ended up, I was actually supposed to go to law school. I deferred. They still have my deposit. But I worked for this worked in this high school history curriculum in New York, and I was putting together this Jewish history curriculum for high school students, and really just discovered like that's what I really liked doing. That's what I wanted to do, and then I went and got my PhD. So I didn't, if you had asked me when I graduated, from high school, what do I want to do? If I sort of had to set out my goals, then maybe I would have been an engineer, and I would have been an absolutely miserable engineer thinking that like, okay, that's the goal that I have to have. So for me, I mean, as long as I knew that I was moving forward, as long as I didn't say, okay, I'm not even gonna think about having a major. Like I knew it was on the horizon, but I wanted to take the classes that interest me. I didn't say, I don't want to get a job, but I said I want to do what's, interesting. And when I found something that I thought was interesting and it wasn't, I said, okay, let's get another one. So I guess I would just say, I mean, that would be my advice. I mean, that was my experience, and I didn't sort of get. It's sort of a fine balance, right, of like not being motivated to do anything and then saying, okay, this is where I have to be in 10 years. I just wanted to be happy in 10 years,
I also think that you're talking about a particular thing that happens at Tulane. As several students every year are in the architectural program for 5 years, realize, I don't know about this, and then but they've done 2 or 3 years of that architecture program, then they're out, and it's very difficult transition. So my hat's off to you. And one thing to realize is that do you want to graduate in 4 years, or do you care?
Oh, yes.
You want to graduate in 4 years. You're going to do whatever it takes, whatever major you can get done, or maybe even the BA in architecture, and get finished. And then you'll be able to make some of these choices and make some of these decisions. If you find you're not interested in anything, then you might have to ask, maybe I need to talk to a counselor. Maybe I need to talk to somebody, because, finding out. What passions do you have?
Film, so I'm currently in Intro to Cinema. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
So that's where you're at right now, and that's what I would do right now. I mean, that's what Michael's saying is just finish that and do it, and then see where it takes you. It's not a straight path. I mean, I know that most people act like it is, but it's just not a straight path. So.
And something I tell my medical students who can't decide what they want to specialize in is try it out. Go attach yourself to whatever specialty you think you might like. For example, for you, you're doing an internship. Similarly, get practical experiences. Try seeing the life of, a builder, whatever person you want to become. Ask, can I follow you around for a week? Let me see what you do. Talk to them. If you don't like it, then okay, that's not for me. So in reality, you want to see that. And in some ways, I feel that people like you who try different things and then finally find their passion, they may be better off than somebody who straight away went into, from high school said, I want to do engineering, I want to be an engineer. And then they finally become an engineer and they hate it. But they don't know what else. They have no skills for anything else. Right? One more thing I'll say that is I'm on the admission committee, and I interview a lot of students for the Tulane Medical School applicants. And we're looking for that sort of person. Generally is not a very high grade earning student that did all science and came straight into medical school. No, we'd rather get somebody who's gone out, experienced life. Currently we have a student who was a CEO of a company, and a very prosperous company, and he gave up that business because he's still young, so he decided he really wants to do medicine. We have people that have done a lot of work internationally and then come and applied, or PhDs and then apply for medicine. So they are now truly passionate about this field. They're going to make a success of it because they've tried other things and then they decided this is what I want. So don't despair.
I see myself in you 30 years ago. I was tall and I was skinny, and I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. So I said, welcome to my world for 30 years, okay? But as I said, I started off in computer science and math because I thought, well, I need to get a job and I can do this. And it wasn't until I had an experience when I was taking some other kinds of courses that I said, wow, this is really what I'm interested in. And that sort of changed my life, and I found my passion. Use your core curriculum also to really explore your interests as well. You have to take courses in different areas. Talk to your friends about, like, who are the quote-unquote best professors to take. The people that you're going to be interested in learning from as well. You have an interest in architecture. You may want to think about some of the art history or art programs, as well as film studies too. So you don't lose that original passion that you had too, because you had an original passion for architecture, and so parlay that into a similar field, and say, hey, what else is available that's similar to that too?
And one thing I'd like to say to you is that I wouldn't view this as a negative that you've spent these years doing that. You have to also figure out what you don't want to do.
Yes.
And so you got one off the list. I know the list seems awful long, but this is the best way to do it. And the worst scenario is exactly what you suggested, which is you go through the whole thing being unhappy and then you just feel bad about the decision. You're doing the right thing.
All right, thank you. Hi, this question is to everyone. A lot of times I struggle with getting myself stretched very thin and stressed out because I have a hard time distinguishing between saying no and turning down offers and actually letting someone down. And I was just wondering how you all balance busy schedules and being successful and working really hard in what you like with also making the time for yourself and not feeling bad about doing that and knowing that you need this time to recharge and it's okay to sometimes turn down other activities that you feel like you might need to do.
You have to realize that we're here tonight, so we're the group that didn't know how to sing.
Yeah. No one asked someone in the hall.
I mean,
Okay.
no, I think that's a challenge. I mean, I struggle with that, and there are, I wish I could give you the perfect answer, but I can tell you that some weeks I'm so proud of myself that I could do that I could say, hey, I'm stretching myself too thin, and I can't do this, and then there are other times where I might say no, and again, sort of feel like I let someone down. But it's a tough balance. I make sure that I've got time that I can kind of have to myself, and I know my wife has an incredibly busy schedule, and so we sort of used Google Calendar to schedule the time where we're not actually going to do anything. Karen, you can attest to that. And sometimes that's just sort of this figuring out process of, okay, how much do I need? But it is it is really empowering when you sort of do reach that point where you can say, like, if I'm stretching myself too thin, then I'm not functioning properly, and I struggle with that. And if you figure out the perfect answer, let me know.
Yeah, make sure that you're doing things that you actually get some juice from. There's some passion in what you're doing. You're just doing things, and it's just like a list, and it feels like a list all day, and your classes feel like more of a list, and you're checking them off. Then I would take some time. And I also think it's extremely important to have some time off every day, just be outside, be, just goofing off, not even like I have to go to the gym and exercise and I have to do this and I have to do that, but really nothing, downtime. We as a culture and you as a cohort, you guys are the busiest people I have ever seen. So I do think we need to say, take a deep breath, take some time off, and really ask them. It's a very important question.
And you have your best thoughts when you're in that downtime, It's I'm always amazed sometimes I'm on a plane and can't do anything else and stuff just comes along. So keep that me time.
And put the computer away a
Yes,
little bit.
get the computer.
iPhone away. I don't do any of the things I'm telling you to do. I'm just
I would also know your own rhythm.
Oh, okay.
I'm a morning person, and so I get up early. I do all my academic stuff early. I get home from work and I veg in front of the TV. I'm a TV junkie. and I do a lot of work. But at night, it would take me 5 hours to read a paragraph that I can read in 2 seconds in the morning. So I know in the morning time, I'm on it. I'm doing all my work, but at night, I'm really sort of relaxing or hanging out, going to happy hour, hanging with my friends. You come to programs like this because I would be home watching Blackish Tonight, Law and Order SVU. I record Top Shelf. Project Runway All Stars is on now. All that stuff's been DVR'd for me.
I'm like MSNBC junkie. I know like every county, you know, how many votes each of the precincts get, you know, but it totally is my world. And I can just be in my space then.
And if you're hanging out with your friends, one of the things I did in graduate school, when most of my friends were not in graduate school, and we would go out to bars and clubs and stuff, at midnight I was cut off because I did not drink after midnight because I knew I had to get up the next morning to study. And I didn't want to sort of having a hangover as an excuse for me sleeping late. And so I would go out and party. But at midnight, I started drinking water. And so my late morning would be 8 a.m. I'm up doing my work.
Know your own rhythm.
I think I can empathize with you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're a person like me, maybe, because I always like to give all my best to what I do and try to do it with perfection, and then I have too many things, and I cannot do it the best way, and I feel very depressed. Is that your case?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So early in my career, when this started happening, there was an old professor who was somewhat of a mentor for me. Here when I joined Tulane, and I went to him and said, I'm frustrated, and I'm like, stretch here and there, and at the end of the day, I don't feel happy with them. I'm not satisfied with what I gave of myself. And then he told me, okay, if you're good at something, everyone wants a piece of you. So you'll be asked to do a lot of things, and then you've got to start being selective. You just have to. So sometimes you may have to choose the things that you agree to do, even though you want to do everything and please everybody.
And I was 21 when I was drinking, by the way.
There you
Just
go.
for the record.
There we go.
Is telling students to.
That would be the crawl underneath your picture in the TV. There's a.
I don't think you're getting enough sleep, says the Jewish mother. Are you getting enough sleep?
No.
Yeah, I know.
But I
Get more sleep.
mean, I would say just one last thing too. I mean, it's so I'm up here tonight. I'm not sitting at home in front of the TV. But what did I do this afternoon? Instead of working on making that test that I got to give Ben tomorrow, I spent a couple hours at the baseball game this afternoon. Because I just said, hey, you know what? This is a really cool event. This is exciting. I definitely get energized by this. But at the same time, like if I'm at work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and if I'm here the entire time, I'm just going to go home absolutely wiped. So I don't tell any of my colleagues. I just hung out at the stadium for a while, watched Tulane take a 4-0 lead, and then came on over here.
Did
They
they
were up
hold
4-0.
on? They hold on and win?
I don't know.
Okay, see,
Wasn't there.
you're very dedicated.
Game was at 3.
You left.
I did.
Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's,
Two final questions and then we'll wrap up
Okay.
for the evening. This next one's for Professor Mark. What would you recommend for students with indivisible disabilities, and how did you get support?
They didn't even know what a disability was when I'm old. But individual disabilities, first of all, we have an office here, Disability Services, and they're fabulous. And there's my man right back there, wave, wave. And we're on a first name basis because I'm one of the professors who cares deeply about this. And I've worked with a lot of students. So the first thing to do is go to that office, get your 504 or whatever you need. If it's ADD or if it's anxiety disorder, or you have a physical disability, you got to get your 504 and get it signed by the professor. Some professors get it, some don't. Sometimes you have to be the educator. You have to take your own. No one's going to do it for you. You got to take your own disability into your own hands, name it, know who you are, know what you need. You want to add anything?
I would just say, going back to one of the prior comments we made, when the students were asking about honest level too. So whether or not you have a disability, if I can be another familiar face for you, or even if you just want to be an ally and help understand the needs of students with disabilities and provide a better learning environment for all students here at Tulane, please come chat with myself, faculty members, or the excellent staff at TASC as well. We're all here to help you. Reach out. That's what we're here for.
Thank you.
More, and when it comes to sort of micro disabilities, more of us have them than don't. We all have something that we're challenged with, so we can be more expansive in our understanding of that. Patrick is terrific. His office is terrific. I've worked with a lot of the people there. So please do seek out help as soon as possible.
And then our last question of the night is for everyone. If each one of you could give us one piece of advice for each student here tonight.
Now, mathematically, you mean, oh, just one comment. Otherwise,
One
for
comment,
I was gonna
each
say,
panelist, that'd be great.
that same week.
I would say find passion and balance in your life. Passion in terms of your academic work, because when you get bored with it, you'll be excited about it so much you want to do it anyway. And then my favorite Monday morning joke is if somebody say, "How was your weekend?" I say, "Oh, I slept around. I slept on the couch. I slept in the guest room. I slept in my room. So I slept around, and it's a wonderful thing to do."
Eat 3 meals a day and get some sleep.
And I'd say also recognize that this is, you know, this is a phase in life, right? Like there are parts about it that's really great. They're really great. There are parts about it that sometimes are a drag, but there are, you know, problems that I face as a college student, and there are problems that you all face as college students, and you know, there's pressure, and there's not enough hours in the day. But recognize that this is, you know, this is kind of part of an evolution, and I wouldn't try to, I guess, keep that perspective a little bit.
All right. We talked a lot today about setbacks and failures and disabilities and things that can really bring you down. And I just want to say, don't let that define you. Don't let that become you. You're much bigger than that. So find a way to do things in spite of what is holding you back. And what I didn't mention is I have a long list of chronic illnesses that I deal with, and my doctor's always joking, okay, one more on the list. So so it's a big list like that. So, but I just deal with it. And the one more thing I want to add is when we talked about minorities and feminists and things like that, after having worked in different parts of the world, more and more I feel that it's not just the minority that has to work to address this difference, it's everybody else. For example, I'm sorry, I'm not an expert and I may be wrong, but I don't like the term feminist because I think everybody else, the men should be also empowering women. So, they should be feminists too. Why should only women be feminists?
Oh,
So
I don't think only
I
women
think,
should be feminists.
But that's the popular notion that it's women that are feminists. So I feel in every way, so minorities. After coming to the US, I feel this stratification is much more acute than what I've seen in other parts of the world, which is very disappointing. And I lead this course in Malaysia where my students work with transgender, and I have a lot of friends that are transsexual, transgender, gay, lesbian, etc. And we work with them primarily HIV infected or drug abusers, etc. When I take my American Tulane students there, it's just like complete shocker for them, and to get used to it and think of them as actual people. The whole purpose of the course is actually, because all my life I've been dealing with disease and the biology of disease, when I started thinking there is a person behind that disease. It's not the label HIV. There's a reason why that person became infected. There's a story behind that. And that's the aim of that course. So it's a shocker for these students, and it's somewhat of a life-changing experience. And if we can start thinking that way, don't leave it to that group. The others should start empowering them too.
And I'd just like to say, particularly at a school like Tulane, sometimes it's so easy to look out at people walking down Broadway or being at the boot and such, and they all seem so happy and so together, and they're not. You know, they're all dealing with a lot of personal issues. And, you know, if you can get to know people on a one-on-one basis, you find out there's a lot more people that are in the same boat you are than there is in looking at that group as a one big unit. It's big out there. And the other thing, last thing is one of the gentlemen that came up, you really have to take time for yourself. I mean, if you want to view your own, like, I know I need to work out 3 times a week. I know I need a certain amount of sleep and such. And even if that's going to push some people away, it sounds bad, but I've got to put myself first, because otherwise I'm not there for anyone. So, I think, let's see. Now this is, first of all, I'd like to, Krista and your staff, can you stand up? You're kind of amazing to put this together. When she first presented this idea to us, I didn't know where she was coming from, but this is really good. And if we could hand it for the panel too, I think it's.
We want to thank you all for coming tonight and thanking our panelists. What they spoke about really got to the essence of what we're trying to create here at Tulane in terms of resilience and helping students nurture their resilience in themselves. So as you leave here tonight, you have an exit ticket on your table. If you don't mind filling this out as you leave, it kind of gives us feedback on how you felt about tonight's event, and also will help guide us in what future programming we should create here at Tulane based on what you all would like to see and hear and know about. You also will receive the book called Learn Optimism as you walk out the door. It's by Martin Seligman, who is the founder of Positive Psychology. And it speaks a lot about how to create resilience in your own life. And so something that was really important to us is you all heard these amazing stories tonight, but it doesn't stop here. Building resilience is something that takes time and changing your mindset. So definitely take this book and read it. And then also my team, as Peter mentioned, we're all here. So if you have any questions about what resources we have to offer and other programming that we have around resilience, feel free to ask myself or any of my team members. So we thank you all for coming, okay?
Thank you.